You adapted, your family adapted. Dan Young is an Inc. 500 serial entrepreneur, crypto hedge fund co-founder, and board member of a leading global tech company.
In other countries, especially like China, there's not a lot of tolerance for stupidity and things that don't move the needle. You got kids, you got to feed them. It's about survival. You know what the hardest race is to beat in America?
No.
White. How do we stop racism? My experience in California and Utah, I didn't experience a massive amount of racism actually from white people. I experienced the most racism from other minorities, a lot of other Asian.
That is weird.
So I got this list and then I cold called all these people and I said, hey, if you buy a computer from me, I will honor your warranty. First year I lost 25 grand in the red. And my wife's like, just get a normal job, She's like, we can't, it's all our savings. And what's crazy is the next year we did over $1 million in revenue.
Dan, I've been doing a lot of research on you, man, and I'm really excited to share your mindset around being a first-generation immigrant. It's just cool to hear the stories because it seems like the general continuity that a lot of first-gen Americans have is that America is the best place on earth.
It is.
For business, for entrepreneurship, for chasing your dream. The American dream is alive and well. Let's just get the backstory, actually, because I think that's a great story.
Yeah. So they were born in China. My mom was Shanghai, and my dad was Qingdao, China. And this is like before the big World War II thing and Japanese occupation and all that. And so my dad was really well off over there. They met here in the U.S., but my dad was super wealthy there because my grandpa was an ambassador from China to Japan pre-war. Mm-hmm. Then the whole war thing started and they got all their property taken away, businesses, everything like that. It was just a bad situation. In fact, my uncle over there had the first Coca-Cola franchise in China.
Wow.
And they imprisoned him. So if you were an entrepreneur, it's a bad thing, right? So they all escaped to America. Mm-hmm. And my dad got a job working at General Motors, janitor, cleaning and stuff like that. And met my mother at church. So that's how they met. And he did pretty well cleaning floors. He was doing great, on charge of that. Oh, and when he got here, how he got that job, though, is he helped the U.S. Army. So for a while there, too, he was doing like artwork for propaganda stuff for the U.S. Army. So when the U.S. Army would like invade an area or defend a territory, they would drop these little leaflets.
Yeah.
That says, hey, Americans aren't going to hurt you. We're going to help you. And so he would design the art.
Oh, that's cool.
And they would drop millions of these leaflets, and then like care packages, like they do in these countries. So that's how he ended up getting here and getting his citizenship later, right? And then he went to Pasadena Art Center to college for art design. And did really well in that college thing. And then what's crazy is he ended up getting a part-time gig with a company called Mattel. They make toys, and he didn't go into the office too much, though. He had like an assistant to help him and stuff. Back then, being a Chinese American was tough, though, because during the World War II, everyone thought, oh, Japan and war and all this. And so they had like internment camps for Japanese. It's pretty rough for all Asians, right? So it was crazy that he came up with these crazy art campaigns for packaging. And one of them was he designed the Barbie doll campaign. A lot of people don't know that. So he got all these big art awards, these like Grammys of art,
So he's behind the artwork for the original Barbie?
All the packaging, marketing stuff, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so that was his big thing. And then also Hot Wheels cars. You maybe seen those little Hot Wheel cars, right?
Yeah.
So that was his claim to fame. So he became an executive there, got these big art awards, and then he started his own art firm, which was cool.
So where did that creativity from him, like where did that come from, would you say, from your father?
He's always just been kind of an artistic, kind of right brain, creative type of dude. Not super great with money, really, but very just hardworking and creative. He's like an artist, right? So, but the crazy thing is this art journey got me into computers and tech because he ended up, he said, hey, I got this company I'm doing a job for. I got to design their instruction manual. They have this computer they're releasing called the Apple II computer. And this is in the mid 70s, like 75, 76. And so we had this whole garage with different parts, Barbie dolls, all kinds of things from before. But also he said, hey, I brought you home a computer. These guys I'm designing this instruction book for, manual for, it's called the Apple computer. A couple guys out of their garage started this thing. And they gave us a computer, and I got a really good deal on some stuff for you, accessories and games and stuff. So when I was 5, he gave me this computer to play with. That's how I got in computers.
That was the first seed.
Yeah, Apple II, man.
So anyone from Utah that listens to the podcast or is watching the podcast can recognize Dan Young. You're like local. Your commercials were on every hour. Like you were killing the marketing for years and decades, right? And so one thing I do want to ask is your perspective, because I was studying geopolitics for a little while. I was getting ready to pull a trigger on a product order from China right in the middle of the pandemic, or like 6 months after it started, or a handful of months. And they're like, we don't know how long it's going to take, but you have to pull the trigger. You have to invest all this money. We don't know. It could take 3 months. It could take 6. There's no timeline. I'm like, what is going on? So I studied a little bit of China and what's going on with that. And I don't want to, say too much about China versus USA, but I did find something interesting, that it seemed like the most, entrepreneurial, successful people in China, they all don't like what's happening in China. Do you know anything about the social classes, like the elites of China and their relationship with their own country? Or
a lot of my friends own factories there that I know, and a lot live in Taiwan as well. And there's a lot of fear that China is going to attack America and things. I don't think they're going to physically attack us. It's kind of like a Costco or Walmart, like blowing up their customers in the parking lot. We are the biggest consumers, right? So I think what they're going to probably do in China, though, is the technique, at least for the government there, probably would be to economically overpower us. And that's why we're, retaliating now with tariffs and things like that. But I think in the grand scheme of things, most young people there and entrepreneurs in China, they want democracy. They really want it. But you saw Jack Ma, CEO of Alibaba before, speak out, and then he kind of disappeared for a while because he spoke openly against the government too heavily. Yeah. But I don't think this is just isolated in China. What happened in America in the previous regime to people that spoke out against the government? What happened to their companies? What happened to all those crypto founders that spoke out? Wow. Yeah. They all got charged by the government. Right. And now Elon, is digging in to government spending and checking their balance sheets, and they're finding interesting things. We don't know what's true or not yet, but we all know that most governments left unchecked can do some pretty nefarious self-serving stuff, Yeah. And that's probably how it is in China and the US. I don't think any government is exempt from corruption. Right.
I think it was just important because from my perspective, born in America, raised in America, when I look at China, I see a united front, but it doesn't seem like it's as united as maybe what we perceive in the West. Right. Yes. Although it is communist, there are still, classes in China that are like, we don't want this, we want democracy. And so it's just an interesting perspective. So thanks for sharing that, because that's kind of what I was like.
There's going to be a big separation of class. There is a big separation of class in China, and there's a big separation of class in the US, and it's only going to become a larger parity as time goes. I was joking. I was talking to my daughter this week, and we went to Colorado with my wife and my daughter, and we were talking about 10, 20 years from now, you'll basically have the tech oligarchs and the universal basic income people living in Ready Player One storage containers with their VR glasses plugged into their Neuralink, right? Yeah. That's probably what you're going to see. And so I had a sales meeting with all my employees this morning for my computer company. And the guys are like, man, where's the world going, Dan? And I'm like, well, it's probably going blockchain, AI integration, probably quantum flavoring into that in a little bit. But this is no different than the evolution into the internet in the 1990s, right? So we're just sitting in this next evolutionary cycle. And the race to control the internet was between America, China, other countries. And American companies dominated, most of e-com. But China is a little bit slower to respond. But what's interesting is you watch Star Wars, the droid factories, the droid replicators. China is very good at replicating and copying things and making them in scale. America is great at innovation and creating just the newest, coolest technologies. But you see a lot of that replication. In fact, Apple and most American companies are making most of their hardware in China or Taiwan or other Asian countries now.
Cheap labor. There's so many things for that. Okay, I do want to get your perspective on the quantum computer. There's something going on with quantum and the blockchain, but I'm going to push that to later in the episode. I want to get back to your origin story. Okay, so you're born. Your parents came here. Crazy story. Your dad. One thing I do want to outline is the immigrant, advantage, which is, although your father was artistic, he did whatever it took, right, to feed and provide for his family and to get to the next steps. Why don't other segments of the population have that mindset, right? Like if you're artistic, the idea is I'm going to be a struggling artist until someone's going to save me, or one piece is going to do well, or I'm going to gain the affinity of the affluent community. Like why is it, or how do you bottle that up and teach that? Because it seems like starting as a janitor, most artists would never do janitorial work, but your father came from affluence, a successful family. You guys came from a successful family, lost it, war happened. The adaptation is phenomenal, right? Yeah. You adapted, your family adapted, you adapted personally, where's the lesson, what are the lessons in that?
The lesson is this, in other countries, especially like China before, there's not a lot of tolerance for stupidity and things that don't move the needle. Here, we spend a lot of energy focusing on little nuances of people's feelings and this and that, which are important. I get it. People's feelings are important, but at first it's about survival. Like, can you pay your rent? Do you have to live on the street? What you got kids, you got to feed them. Like it's about survival. And the problem with America, I think, with American culture, a lot of things that have happened, not everybody, there's a lot of great hardworking people, but there are a lot of those kind of handout mentality or participation trophy. Like, hey, you came in 8th place in class and you get this giant trophy and you're just as good as the first place winner. And in China, you either win or you lose. You're either impoverished, begging for one rice bowl, or you're building a huge empire. That is the big thing.
There's no ambiguity about it.
Yeah. I'll share you a picture. I don't know if you share pictures in this podcast, but there's a picture of my grandpa, which is crazy. He's wearing all Western outfits, like almost 100 years ago. And the license, he has a car in China and sitting with my grandmother. And the crazy thing is his license plate number is 3. Third car in China.
Oh, shoot.
Which is crazy. Wow. And they got all these servants and stuff. Well, my dad was telling me how they got paid, which was crazy back in the day. People who really worked hard and really created and were entrepreneurs and created these businesses, they were paid in gold and silver ingots. And they would have servants carry just piles of gold and silver. And there you go. And all the villagers would bow and stuff. And then what was cool is my grandpa was a cool guy. They support a lot of different orphanages to help underprivileged kids and things like that. So one thing that you do see, which was interesting enough, a lot of people don't hear about. A lot of people think that wealthy people in America or wealthy people in China, a lot are just self-serving. But what's amazing though is I see a lot more giving from ultra wealthy than people who have hand me down stuff. Like in America now, if someone doesn't like something, let's say they don't want animals to be hurt or they don't want this certain group of people to be attacked and stuff like that, they end up doing useless stuff like protesting instead of actually working hard, gathering resources, then allocating those resources to create educational centers, to create ways to teach younger people, mentor those people so they can help themselves. So, the old saying is like, teach a person to fish and so just throw fish at them, right? That's a mentality that's kind of gone away. Now, I believe COVID was an interesting thing, the whole pandemic. It trained people to become useless slaves. So, okay, the government will give you this. You sit, you get fat, you do DoorDash, you surf the internet all day, and you do what we say. You wear this mask, you get these weird chemicals injected in yourself or whatever. Yeah, everybody complied because it was easy. It was almost like that movie Wall-E where everyone became fat and floated on this floater and got a universal basic income. Mm-hmm. But people got kind of sick of that. Americans, though, which is crazy, is a huge percent of the population were like pioneers, you know? So like the Caucasian people were originally immigrants and pioneers and had to escape England and all these persecution.
Yep.
But a lot of generations, they tend to forget that. Mm-hmm. Why I think there's this thought that a lot of immigrants work really hard, you know, is because from the country they came from, like you're just fighting to get a bowl of food to eat.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like do whatever is necessary, you know, to get that outcome. But it's a big cultural shift. I think now it's actually cool. Just in the last 6 months, 3 to 6 months, there's been this big revolution of work really hard, American dream, white picket fence, get a dog, get a truck. You know,
you think it's back in style again?
It is now. Yeah. In fact, you've seen the whole separation from like, you know, easy street, wherever you are, whatever color, you're old, you're young, you just get a free ride. Now it's like, you can be old, you can be young, you can be Asian, black, white, green, but you can make yourself into somebody. Mm-hmm. And that's the American dream. Mm-hmm. And so we're getting back to that again. Yeah. And the people that want the hand-me-outs and the laziness, now they're considered lazy, bad people now. And they're getting completely deleted now. Yeah. Because how long, it's kind of like having that one friend, whenever you go out to eat, you're buying. Buying. He's like, bro, let me borrow $100. Yeah. After a while, you're like, get out of here, dude. I don't even want to hang out with you.
100%.
And so they're ejecting that lazy culture now, which is cool.
Yeah.
I think it's great because everyone steps up because a country cannot be profitable without gross domestic production, gross domestic product. You need GDP to make it happen. You can't just print money out of nowhere. Otherwise, we're going to be $50 eggs, right?
And I really like the tone of and the cadence of this conversation because I feel like everything that I've watched of you, this is just a different tone. And I thank you because you're showing really just yourself and authentic, and that's awesome. So going back to when you started, you got that initial seed planted of where you went. Man, there's just so many directions I want to go in because first I want to highlight you and say, because one of the things that I mention a lot on this podcast is 45% of Inc. 500 companies are founded by or ran by first gen or second gen immigrants. Over 50% of Fortune 100 companies have that same statistic. So you are an Inc. 500 entrepreneur.
Right.
And so you are you are the peak of what I speak on when we talk about the immigrant mindset, the immigrant hustle. And it's amazing. And we're so grateful to hear from you. So I don't want to downplay your perspective or overlook what you've actually accomplished, which is what...
You know what the hardest race is to be in America?
No.
You know? Mm-mm. White. But it's changing. Here's the thing, though. I love all colors of people.
Yeah.
I'm a minority myself and an immigrant. But really, like, if you're a white dude, like, or even an Asian dude, too, sometimes, see how hard it is to get into some colleges. They're like, because of all this, you know, DEI stuff and all that, a lot of times it's harder for certain races to get into that school. Even if they have higher grades, they're actually suppressed. It's easy to get sued. It's called a protected class. If you are white male between like 18 years old and like 40, like you say one wrong thing, you're getting lawsuit, all this kind of stuff is being racist and all that. And so as a white male in that, I'm not a white male, but I see a lot of darts being thrown at friends in that age that run companies and stuff. And they're like, so-and-so soon, I'm not, and they're not prejudiced. Like some of these guys I've known for decades, and they're getting lawsuits and discrimination stuff and all this crazy stuff. And I'm just like, man, that's crazy that you have to step on eggshells. Yeah. Like, or reverse discrimination.
Yes. Yep.
That's just weird. It should simply go by competency. Like, if you're smart, you're smart. If you're dumb, then you're dumb. I mean, it's kind of like you get the cards that you're dealt.
Competency and merit.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you bring the results, if you built skill sets and those skill sets bring results, especially in business, then it doesn't matter what race, color, class, whatever, sexual, no one cares. The people that are the loudest or that have that reverse discrimination are looking for a leg up without doing anything.
Someone asked, I spoke at the Asian Chamber of Commerce. I got some booze and then some standing ovation.
Hell yeah.
This is crazy. So people asked me, this is years ago, 6 years ago. Dan, how do we stop Asian hate? How do we stop racism? Mm-hmm. I go, well, first of all, my experience in California and Utah, I didn't experience a massive amount of racism actually from white people. I experienced the most racism from other minorities.
Wow.
And a lot of other Asians, which is weird.
That is weird. Yeah.
In California. Mm-hmm. Now, when I came to Utah back in the 80s, and I was like, man, people are here. This is going to be weird. It's going to be like hillbilly land. I move in. Mm-hmm. The neighbors start pounding on my door. I'm like, oh, they're crazy. They're going to try to run me out of the neighborhood. They bring over freaking like meatloaf and Jell-O. And I'm like a teenager. And they bring over their cool, cute daughter. Hey, you guys should be friends. I'm like, what the heck? They're feeding me. They're introducing me to their daughter. They're like, come over for dinner. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, these are the nicest people in the world. And that's why I fell in love with Utah. Because at least in Utah, some of the kindest people that you could imagine are right here in Utah.
Yeah.
And the thing that really got me kind of riled up, is a lot of my friends that are minorities, I love them all, white people, green people, yellow people, black people, whatever people. Mm-hmm. But some just had this ingrained chip on their shoulder, which is crazy. My nephew is adopted, African-American kid. His name's Ryan. And he says, Uncle Dan, what can you teach me, like how to be successful, make big money and, help the world? And I says, well, first, just remember, because you're African-American or anything, that's actually an advantage. And he goes, what?
Wow.
What are you talking about? What kind of advantage is that? I'm like, well, you stand out. If you're a good sales guy and you stand out and there's 50 other guys and they're all white dudes, who are they going to remember if you're competent?
Wow. Yep. There you go.
He goes, me.
Yeah.
And I go, you got nice white teeth and a big smile and you speak well. Like, dude, you could really grow and become somebody. It was interesting because that year I talked to him, he was making about 40 grand a year. Mm-hmm. And within less than 7 years, he beat almost 200,000 in a year. Wow. And he bought his house, married his dream girl, got himself a new Tesla. This is like, it's so crazy is that some people are creating their own bag of rocks, their own burdens of like, I mean, if you walk into a room and you go, everyone's going to hate me, everyone's going to hate me, people can feel that energy.
Yeah.
But if you go in there and go, man, I'm going to stand out. No one's going to forget me. I'm going to help everybody I can. Then you're going to win because everyone knows your name.
That was probably one of the most powerful reframes that I've heard on this podcast. And I've produced hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands. And I don't think I've heard a more powerful reframe. And I think I understand why you started to get booed at first, but then why people stood up and said it. Because it really is the game. Is here.
I didn't tell you how I told them how to stop Asian hate.
Okay, yeah.
They're like, well, get a concealed carry permit, buy a Glock 19, and practice with that. Be able to protect yourself if you need to, legally, and be competent, be situationally aware, and don't act like a victim. Now, it doesn't mean you aren't going to get jumped walking down the street or something like that. I said, but Asian brothers and sisters is probably not some like white nerdy kid who's going to jump you walking down that street. I'm like, so remove judgments from all races and people and realize people are people. There's bad people. There's good people of all sorts. But you just got to take yourself out of that victim mentality. They're like, well, what if we're stereotyped as Asians? People think that we're awkward and we're only like nerds or whatever, or socially dumb or can't play sports. I'm like, it's true. What? We're all Asian people going to be in the NBA and NFL? Like, serious.
Right.
No, but hey, are we going to be better in yoga class maybe? Like, because that's already...
Yeah.
Are we going to be better at like kung fu? Maybe are we going to be good at kung fu because we're flexible or something? Are we going to be good at science and math because we were raised that way by our parents and we got yelled at if we didn't get straight A's in math and computers? So, like, look, if you're a pug, don't pretend you're a pit bull.
Wow.
Pugs make their whole. I have 2 pugs. Pugs make their whole living just being cute, cuddly, and charismatic, and they get the best food and everything. Pit bulls get tied to a tree and beaten and made to fight. Like, so, hey, if you're born a pug, count your blessings. Be roly-poly, happy, and friendly, and people will feed and pet you, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard, but people try to force themselves sometimes to be what they're not. We're dealt the cards that we are. Like, and as Asians, we're not probably ever going to be some heavyweight champion boxer, dude. Like, probably not genetics, right? But darn well a good chance that we're going to be like a Star Trek Vulcan and be good with number crunching or something like that. That's actually not a bad stereotype. So now, if I was really genetically born athletically, I've got some friends that are like Tongans and Samoans and stuff that are huge, like, and man, like for football, there's no way that I would play football with them because it would kill me.
Right.
Because they're wired like that. And those guys are cool because they always come to me, hey, Dan, teach me some computer nerdy stuff. And, I'm like, okay, teach me how to throw a ball or run.
Yeah.
And you're born what you're born with, man. But people try to like force equality and skill sets when, and this sounds crazy, but genetically speaking, again, does a pit bull or a greyhound and a pug, they're all dogs and they could all reproduce and stuff like that, right? It's just like we're all humans.
Yep.
But are they physically different? And do they have different mental attributes and different skills in different areas? So why deny that?
Right. 100%.
It just blows me away. But people get so insulted when they're like, oh, you this, you that. You could be anything. You just like, well, just go the path of least resistance, man.
So what you're saying is it's people are putting themselves in this victim mentality, relinquishing control and power to other people outside of their control. And that reframe and that ability to be like, hey, I am that. That's okay. It might be harder, whatever, but at the end of the day, you can't change this.
Your biology, you got what you got, man.
You know what I mean? So you either are grateful for it or you're not. And you can't play victim and be grateful at the same time.
Dude, I sure wish I was 6'7" and 270 and just freaking ripped and could run and throw a ball.
Right.
I tried to play football when I was little and I broke my collarbone the 3rd game. I got tackled by a big old dude and broke my collarbone. And the coach is like, dude, this probably ain't for you, dude.
Yeah,
and I'm
good coach.
Thanks, man. He goes, you should go to computers or something. I'm like, and I could have been insulted. I'm like, no, I'll just go to computers. Less physically demanding.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think also sharing with the audience that, and the people listening, that you are saying this, but you also were in a rock bottom situation in your teenage years, right? So it wasn't just like you found computer and you started building computers and then now, you're super successful. It was, you had to learn a lot of these lessons in the trenches. Can you share what you were like as a teenager and why you moved to Utah in the first place?
Well, it's pretty simple again. Little Asian dude, $120 in high school. $120 is pretty small. 5'9", $120 rail, right? Skinny. Can't punch my way out of a paper bag, right? And there, in schools in Los Angeles, man, there's some big physical violence, And if you're $120, you're not like gonna be real good at like fighting, really. I mean, I took like some MMA stuff and jujitsu and all that, and I can handle okay. But you have 5 dudes jump you, and you're, And so I just started hanging out with other guys that said, well, physically, if you can't fight, there's things called weapons. And weapons equalize any situation, right? Whether it's a knife, a bat, or whatever you're going to be carrying. And so a lot of my friends were very, very rowdy dudes. And they were like little dudes, 5'2", 5'4", 5. I was like the tall guy, 5'9". And they're like, well, no one messes with us because we hang out in big groups and we're well protected. And so hanging out with those guys, it was fun. I mean, we got to go party and hang out and got respect. And even the big, super athletic football player dudes were never picking on us because they're like, dude, those guys, dude, Like you will not live if you mess with like those type of people. And so that did two things. It made you feel safer because I got sick of being picked on every day and beat up and stuff. But that brings you down also a dark path because then your ego starts getting to you. You're like, hey, we're unstoppable. We can party as much as we want and do whatever we want. And that's how I ended up being a rowdy teenager and ended up in juvenile hall. Because just by proximity, you know, they say the 5 people you hang out with, you become like. Dude, and some of my friends were off the rails, like crazy, you know. And for me, I just liked being safe and having a good time, you know. Never really had this big attraction towards violence or anything like that. But a lot of those guys did. But if you had one friend who was psycho and he like did something, beat up somebody or something, and you're just standing there, you're in trouble too. Yeah. So that circle, I can't tell you how important it is to pick that circle. And that's why my parents, after the little juvenile hall thing, they're like, you go live in Utah with your sister and she's really responsible and there's nice people in Utah. You got the Mormons there. They're really kind and, you know, believe in Jesus. You'll be good. So I came to Utah. And it actually was true. Like everyone was so nice. People were so peaceful. People bringing meatloaf, you know, green jello. Like, I'm like, these are the nicest people. And
especially in the 80s, is that when you?
Late 80s, yeah. And it felt good. I'm like, these people are so nice. And Utah was great because I'm like, I'm going to find me a wife one day. And in Utah, there's actually more good-looking women per capita than LA. I'll just tell you that from my observation.
Don't move here.
And maybe it's just the clean living. Maybe it's because people are more health conscious and, you know, maybe they're not getting, the majority of the population is not constantly drunk all day or doing drugs.
Right.
They're very like straight edgy, clean, like, and some people go, oh, they're, you know, prissy or preppy or whatever they want to call it. But you don't drink a lot and party a lot. Like you're probably going to look better. And if you exercise and move around and go hiking and stuff, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So
when you said that you went to juvenile detention for 6 months, like that's a pretty long-standing amount of time in that. Were you implicated for something? Were you guilty by association, or what was the situation that got you in that?
Association, because I had some friends that were really rowdy, got in trouble. Some weren't even American citizen guys. They were here just like crazy refugee dudes, and those guys, just hanging out with those guys, got in huge trouble. We all got in big trouble. I went to juvenile detention. Then I went through the slow legal process. And then finally they said, Dan, we're calling your parents. I'm like, great, to pick you up. I'm like, that's wonderful. I'm like, because you didn't do anything. You're hanging out with these bad guys that did a lot of bad stuff. But even those guys said you were just along for the ride. And, you know.
Wow. Okay.
So then
That's
they're
cool.
like, so they actually gave me a little bit of money too for tying up half my year of my life. Here's a little bit of money. I think it was like $5,000. It wasn't like,
yeah.
And I'm like, well, cool. I can put a deposit in an apartment and buy myself a $500 junker car and get going. Because I remember coming here, I was walking around downtown Salt Lake. I didn't have a car, didn't have an apartment. My sister let me camp out for a couple months, you know. So it was a start, you know.
Man, that's incredible. I think the lesson there for sure is the audit your circle like your life depends on it. You're probably one of the first people that actually went to a jail or to juvenile detention because of the people you hung out with, even though you weren't responsible for anything that they were doing. You were just guilty by association, and it literally ruined your, you know, life in that instance, right?
Yeah. That happens as an adult. You hang out with wrong people.
Oh
man. That'll put you down the wrong path.
Yeah, 100%. And so you learned that lesson at a young age. Do you have any lessons from experiencing kind of that shadow side, or we'll call it the dark side of humanity? Was there anything that you learned from that maybe even helped you? Like Robert Greene talks about this stuff a lot in the 48 Laws of Power. Were there things that you learned that kind of helped you throughout your life from being in those situations?
Energy is just energy.
Okay.
The difference between good and evil is just a choice of where the energy is directed. It's just as hard to do illegal activities, and it's just as hard to do it the right way. It's really hard to, like, let's say guys are like stealing cars or whatever. That's freaking hard. They're all afraid that they're getting arrested or someone's going to, you know, whatever. But then, like, starting a legitimate business, like I started a little swap meet stand while I was selling Ginsu knives and pepper gas and t-shirts and stuff. Like, that's just as entrepreneurial. It's probably equally as stressful as like if I was like a carjacker guy or something, like GTA.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably more stressful to be a GTA guy, So it's just energy direction. And really, I think a solution for a lot of the young people out there is they have a lot of energy. It's just they don't have the right mentors. They don't have people like showing them what they could do with that energy. Because what society tells them is go to school, get straight A's, get a scholarship, go to college, graduate, get a good job at a company. But nowadays, people don't have to do that. They don't have to be academically smart. They could just have a good personality and go a long way. In fact, you could probably go longer on a personality than you can with most accounting degrees.
So I just saw a tribute on Instagram of your father, his life, his history, and your father passed a couple years ago, your late father. And so it seemed like he was an awesome mentor. What do you think was the reason that you attached to that, that group at that age, rather than seeking the counsel of your father or being mentored by your father?
He's working so much,
right,
to pay the bills, and my mother. So they call it latchkey kid. Like, you would have to lock the door at home when you were 7 years old because you're all alone. So I was just bored. That's it. Just boredom, But there is one man, actually. My father inspired me, and then I could see that he was just grinding away every day. My mother just working until they were crying. My mother was crying. We were so poor. We had to get food stamps and all this stuff at certain points. But the crazy thing is, my dad said, I want you to meet Uncle Henry. We came on the boat together. So my Uncle Henry started a bank in California.
Wow.
One of the largest banks in California.
Wow. And
I think when he passed his net worth in 1981 or something was like $750 million, which in 81 is a lot.
Yeah.
It's way over billions now.
Yeah.
And the guy actually came over, and they both were janitors and all that kind of stuff. And he talked to me, and I said, how'd you make all this money, Uncle Henry? And he goes, well, simple. Chinese immigrants were coming over. They didn't trust the government or banks or anything. Like, they had what they had.
Yeah.
And he goes, so I started a bank and said, put your money in my bank. And I will help you find a job, a church to go to, community in Chinatown in California, right? And you'll be part of a community. You'll feel like your village in China, except you're in America.
Yeah.
And we will introduce you to American opportunity. We'll help you go to UCLA, USC, get in these colleges or whatever. Back then, that was the big thing, college. Now it's not as important, but we'll help you get integrated in the community. We'll get you a job, and we'll give you community support. And so other Chinese immigrants started telling other Chinese immigrants. And then Hong Kong started getting seized by China, remember? So all these people were escaping Hong Kong and stuff like that. And so all those people from Hong Kong, they'd call up, hey, can I send you 100 million, 200 million? And he's like, yeah, for a small fee, I can help you, man.
Nice.
And so they sent him all that. And so Uncle Henry taught me about solving problems. And being, he made a little small percentage of the money, but he would make their lives so much better. That was of value to those people because they felt trust and their life went good, right? So then I was thinking, as an entrepreneur, like if I wanted to start my own business one day, what problems do people have? And how can I be part of that process to make them feel secure and safe and actually deliver on that,
Yeah.
So that's how I started a computer company, crypto hedge fund, all those things. Because these are all new, like technology is a new thing to people.
Yeah.
And they want to be safely guided into those things.
Man, I want to hit on a key point here because my synapses, and I'm getting illuminated here because my father immigrated from South America, Argentina, and then he started a tax company. And so he has, for the last 35 years, had 2,000 Latinos come to his tax company. Like 90% of his clientele are Hispanics. And when, earlier in this conversation, we said America is the land of opportunity. Oh, yeah. So not only if you have immigrated like we have, where I was the minority, I was one of a handful of Latino kids at Alta High School, or you know what I mean? Not only can you reframe that and say, like, now you're standing out. That's amazing. So with the right charisma, with the right work ethic, like you will stand out more than anybody else.
Yep.
But you can also build communities of like-minded ethnic backgrounds, which wouldn't be possible in China, by the way, right? Like you can go to China and build an American community. They wouldn't allow that, correct? No?
Not really.
Okay,
not like here.
Yeah. And so I guess what I'm saying is that that's so profound because like every perspective in every direction you look, there is opportunity if you allow your mind to open up like to that.
Exactly.
So now going back to your history, to you had an uncle who was a billionaire in the 80s, 90s, or in the 80s, and
he never gave me any money.
He never gave,
just so you know.
Yeah.
He gave me knowledge. He said, "I'll give you knowledge, but you have to earn your own."
Yeah, sometimes that's better than money, right?
And my dad had no money, so
so you're getting these spurts of mentors and inspiration. And then you start on the path of your first job was Radio Shack?
Radio Shack was one of my first jobs in the mall. And then I worked at the swap meet on weekends selling Ginsu.
Swap meets, yeah. And so your first kind of taste back into tech was going to Radio Shack. And then I really like the story of when you worked for a company selling computers and then they went under.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what kind of that experience and who was with?
Yeah. So after Radio Shack, there was a company called Silo. They're kind of like Best Buy, right? But of the day.
Uh-huh.
And I was selling like TVs, computers, just like you go to Best Buy, same stuff, right?
Yeah,
just back in the 80s, right? And I became the number one sales guy out of 4,000 sales guys. And there was actually a trick to that because I was the worst sales guy at first. And my boss, Greg and Ron, two bosses, they're like, "Hey, there's 3 top sales guys. There's this Mexican dude named Manny Chavez. He's my friend still. And there's another guy named Jason Robles, another Mexican guy. And there's a black dude named Michael Banks. And those guys are all, you can find them on Instagram. They're cool.
That's awesome.
Companies, yeah. And they're like, those guys freaking make way more than anybody. They're the top 3 dogs. You should go become friends with them. So I meet these 3 guys and I say, "Hey, I want y'all to come with me to get a hamburger." And we're all eating burgers. I'm like, "Will you guys teach me how you do it?" So one guy goes, "Hey, the trick is, man, you really got to know your technical stuff and you got to understand financing. Because when you're selling big ticket, you got to make it affordable for people so they can afford it." So another guy, he's like, "The key to selling is just finding out what they do like and they don't like and catering to their needs. Like if they're buying a refrigerator, what did you like about your old one? Was it not big enough? Was it not cool enough? Did you want a freezer on top or bottom?" And the third guy is all about selling warranties. People want to feel secure. So I'm going to teach you how to like get them warranty. So when they buy a washer and dryer, it's warranted for 10 years instead of 1, you know? That's how I make my money. So I learned from these guys for about a year. But I became the top warranty salesman, there at the place, the top ticket type of items, because I could sell big ticket, and then the top financing guy, as well. And so it's almost like, this is like MMA in that they taught me ground game, stand game,
Yeah.
And so, some good leg work and stuff like that. And that's how I became the top guy. And it's funny because I see these guys at the gym and stuff now. They're about my age. And they're like, "Dude," they're like, "You pulled a Highlander, man. You got like our superpowers." And you figure out how to mix them together. That's how you became the guy. So
being coachable, being humble. I think it's really hard for the younger generations in that beginner stage of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like beginning to become a high performer. It's hard for them to put themselves in those situations where they have to ask for candid feedback and advice and perspective, and then take that and then implement it, right?
It's all about ego though, because those guys, I said, "Hey, the reason I'm buying you burgers is not because I want to buy you burgers. The reason I'm buying your burgers is because you guys are the best in the whole company.
Yeah.
And when I grow up, I want to be like you. So how do you do it?" And most people that have big egos, they want to give advice.
Yep.
Like maybe I have a little bit of a big ego. I'm on your podcast. I want to help people, right? And I don't care if people pay me for it. I just want to help people, man.
Yeah.
And so that was the key. So after I became the top guy there, this company goes bankrupt because they're owned out of England, and the company goes bankrupt. So when they go bankrupt, I asked my manager, Greg and Ron, I'm like, "Hey man, can I get the list of all the customers I sold stuff to over the years, computers specifically?" And they're like, "Yeah, we don't care. We're out of a job. The company's gone. It doesn't matter." So I got this list, and then I cold called all these people, and I said, "Hey, if you bought a computer from me, I will honor your warranty." And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." So this is before like cell phones are big, right? Pagers is what I had to. And so that first year I lost 25 grand in the red, just trying to help warranty these computers for people. And my wife's like, just get a normal job. Mm-hmm. She's like, we can't, that's all our savings. I had like 30 grand, I think, saved up, burnt through over 25. She's like, we have 5 grand left.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is the next year we did over $1 million in revenue, because all the customers would call back and be like, hey man, thanks for helping me out. And hey, we need some more for our office. We need some more computers. And that's how I built my clientele.
I want to really highlight that moment, because I feel like I've been in that moment too with my significant other, my fiance, where you're taking a huge risk. Did you have kids at that point?
No.
Okay. So no kids, but you still had a dependent, right? You're providing for your wife. And it's not that she wasn't supporting, she was there every step of the way.
She was working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
To help pay them rent.
Yeah. And so that, I guess, hearing that from your partner, some people might take it as like, she doesn't believe in me, but I don't think that's the case, right? I just don't think that she has your vision, your one man's perspective. And so talking through that when you're taking these large risks, most people will never get there, but when they get there, they might have like a negative experience with their partner, because they're like, hey, you should just go get a job. And they're like, no, this is going to work. How did you work through that with your partnership?
It's agreements.
Mm-hmm.
So you just say, hey, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And then you write down your goals, physical, financial, spiritual. Mm-hmm. I asked her what her goals were, and you align those. Mm-hmm. And then she was like, okay, what's your time frame to do this? Mm-hmm. And I says, well, I think it's probably going to take a year or 2 to, get things going. She's like, well, meanwhile, okay, if we're going to do that, then I'll work a couple of jobs and you can do this thing, and we'll try to make it work. And she even helped with my accounting and all that,
Wow.
So turned out that it worked,
Yeah.
If it didn't work, I probably would have got some corporate job at, Intel or Microsoft and still made $1 million something a year. Mm-hmm. Fine. And probably been fine. A lot of my friends did that, and that's okay. Just a different path, So I wasn't super stressed. I knew with my skill set, it's technology. Just like today, if you learn blockchain, AI, and all that, you're probably going to have a job. If you're taking traditional stuff like accounting or even, things like that, you're probably going to be unemployed in 5 years, because AI going to ruin you.
AI is crazy. Even lawyers, AI.
Oh yeah, But if you know tech, or you have personality, and you can solve problems for people, that I think is huge. And that's why I think, like with sales, I think sales skill, as long as there's people around, is the number one skill. Mm-hmm. Can you sell? Mm-hmm. Anything. Can you solve problems for people, and plug solutions in for them and make it easy? So
you went from first year, $27,000 in the red. Next year, $1 million in revenue. How long that's PC laptops, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. How long have you guys been in business? Over 30 years?
92.
Since 92. Okay. And so since then, when did you start taking that to the next level? Because $1 million in revenue you're still considered a small business.
Small.
Inc. 500, is that medium or is that large? Would that be considered
That
large?
happened in about the year 2000.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact revenue at the time. Mm-hmm. I think it was probably somewhere between 6 to 10 million, somewhere in there, in rev.
And so was there a large difference? Like, what would you say are the main differences of how you showed up, the first 5 years versus on the back end? Like was that 10 years in at that point? 8 years in?
Yeah, about 8. Mm-hmm. Now, the big thing was just system process, documenting system processes. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you run accounting? How do you run sales? You write down what you do. You have written processes. Because then you can start replicating and expanding and hiring more people. Because remember that year that I did $1 million in rev, it was just me and one employee part-time and my wife. Mm-hmm. But then I started hiring a lot more guys. Mm-hmm. And really, there's an old saying, it's better to have a few percent of the effort of 100 or 200 or 1,000 men than 200% of your own.
Wow.
So it's just leveraging time.
And what would you say over the last, how many decades, 3 decades in business, 2 decades, 2.5 decades in leadership, What are some of your kind of like keystones for when it comes to advice for leadership?
It's interesting. There's different levels of leadership. You have large scale leadership. You have small team leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You have finance leadership. You have operational leadership. You want to find people a lot of times when you're talking more the sales end of things, or someone to be a president of one of my companies,
mm-hmm.
is typically someone who has entrepreneurial tendencies, but they do crave consistency and security.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, if they're an entrepreneur, they're always scared that they're going to go out of business and it gives them a nervous breakdown. And then they just totally collapse. And so what you'll see, I like to hire guys that usually had 2 to 4 or 5 year stints and failed. 2 to 4 or 5 year stints and failed because they didn't have emotional state control.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I offer. Money.
Wow.
And state control and systems. And so basically you have someone who can, so I'm kind of the visionary guy. Okay, this is what we're going to do.
Yep.
But then you need the guy or the girl to frame out and execute that plan once it's from an idea to a daily execution point.
Right.
And for them to do that, you're going to have to pay them big bucks. You're going to have to pay them 100, 200, 300 grand a year plus bonuses and all that. And then they're going to enjoy a piece of the pie and constantly execute on that level for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put up with all the stress of creating some stability for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you learn that formula on your own through experience, or did somebody teach you that formula? Mentors. Yeah. That's powerful. I don't think I've ever heard that, because one of the things that that I've noticed is that usually the high performing employees are the ones that have all of the attributes of a good entrepreneur: critical thinking, vision, hard work ethic, but they are the most unemployable.
Entrepreneurs are usually unemployable.
But what you're saying is accurate.
But they have to have the fear.
They have the taste. They're like, oh, no, it's out of my system. Now
they have failed so hard that they're like, I need consistency.
Yes.
But the thing is with me, so like one of my presidents of my companies, I'm like, hey, bro, if we sell this for 100 million, you get, 5%, 10%, or whatever the deal is for the particular president of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's thinking, hey man, I can work on this for 5 years and, I get paid a couple hundred, a few hundred grand a year plus benefits and all that. But if they roll an exit for 100 million, I get 10 million bonus and I keep my job. Gee, that's a lot of cash, dude. And if we happen to hit the big one, like we end up scaling AI server bigger and we sell for $1 billion, he get $100 million. And I paid for it all money wise. And he got his good salary. And then even if we got acquired or IPO'd, he probably gets a raise and he can do it for another 10, 20 years. And then, I can focus on whatever I want to focus on.
Wow.
So it's a good deal for them. It's almost like Shark Tank. I'm funding them.
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah.
With giving them some consistency.
Yeah.
Hey, my wife's going to be cool with it because I'm making a couple hundred G's a year. But the upside can be probably bigger than because the thing is, I said to one of my presidents, I said, if you hustled and worked your butt off, how long would it take you to sell a $100 million company? He's like, decades, man. I'm like, so if you come work with me and we could do it, in less than a third of the time, using my money, and you have a guaranteed consistency, and I'll help recruit men and women for you to be partners with you. How does that sound? He goes, well, I'll get there quicker and I have security.
Yes. That's crazy.
I'm in, dude.
Yeah. That is a powerful value proposition.
That's how I got my one president runs my companies. I recruited him. He used to work for NVIDIA actually years back.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then moved to a couple of companies, came over. So it was a good investment.
Yeah. NVIDIA. For people that don't know who NVIDIA is, the company, can you share what NVIDIA is?
They make all the AI chips, right? The GPUs to do processing. Jensen Huang. They became the biggest company in the world for a moment. And them and Microsoft were kind of battling out, and Apple.
What's their valuation or market cap?
I think they're up like $4 trillion for a point. But the market, they're talking about that a little bit because everyone's freaked out from DeepSeek.
Yep.
But then people realize, oh, you need chips for DeepSeek. Oh, okay, well, it's going back up.
Yeah. Could you share some of the, losses during your journey? Because some people might be hearing this and being like, oh man, it was so good. He had it so easy. He already had a skill set that was, trending upwards and had a quantum leap in technology. Were there moments where you had just huge losses that knocked you off the horse And it could have been.
You have those every few years.
Yeah. Still.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just bigger stakes, you know? So, I mean, one of the big losses that I had is we opened a call center, had 400 employees. And then Google changed it. We were selling computer tech support. And we were printing so much money.
What was the name of the company?
On that Geek Box.
Okay.
And still exists today, actually, in a different way. But Google changed their thing because, you know, you had those scammers in India that were like tricking people to buy tech support. And so suddenly Google said, no more advertising tech support. So I had no leads. I had 400 people in this building, no leads. So I had to lay off like 300 people. Took 100 of them, gave them different jobs.
Yeah.
You know, try to save what you can. And that was just devastating. And I was like, so that was a big setback. And then what else is a big setback? We had some tariff setbacks and we had to navigate those like 2016, 17, right? But we got around. It was fine. I've had...
What was the biggest financial loss you ever had?
Financial loss?
Mm-hmm. Biggest investment to date? You lost your ass on.
My biggest loss and gain was crypto. I put a lot of money into Bitcoin when it was $1,700 a Bitcoin. I put a lot of money and it dropped to $130. So it's like 80, 90% drop. And my wife's like, what are you doing?
Did you go on that?
No, that was just all my savings.
And you held.
And then within a couple of years, though, I went up to $19,000 from $150.
Yeah.
That was up in 17. And then I hung on to more, you know, and then now I run the hedge fund. So now today it's like almost 100 G's, right? So that's like up and down.
For my listeners, they don't know that you had the biggest Bitcoin mining rig in Utah in 2013, right?
2014.
2014.
Biggest Bitcoin mining facility. It was in South Jordan, Utah.
And so that's where luck meets opportunity cost, where you were like building this computer company and then you had all these excess GPUs.
Well, that was actually where I almost went out of business because my chief operations officer had bought too many GPUs, like maxed our credit lines because we thought there'd be a shortage, but there was an overage.
Oh, man.
Because all this stuff going on in China, you know?
So who miscalculated?
Well, it's ultimately my fault because, you know, but me and my COO.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, what are we going to do with this inventory, Dan? I didn't know that. I go, it's not your fault, dude. Actually, I approved it. And I thought there was going to be a shortage too. So it's not your fault. And he's like, well, we're screwed, dude. How are we going to sell these? We can't sell them for loss. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, we're going to hook them up and mine Bitcoin, bro. So we hooked up 4,000 mining rigs and we were mining Bitcoin for like $150 to $300 each. Printing.
That's
and
amazing.
We weren't mining Bitcoin, we were mining Doge.
Oh, wow.
So we even did better. So it was wild, man. So that's where like you turn adversity into something. That saved me, man, because if we didn't mine Bitcoin, we're dead.
Was that a 7, 8, 9-figure gain? In the
it's
long
pretty
term?
big gain because in 17, I sold about 17% of my Bitcoins between 12,000 to 19,000 a Bitcoin.
Wow.
And then I bought a bunch of commercial real estate. And I still hung on to 25%.
Mm.
But then even after that, I kept on buying Bitcoins every month or two. You know?
Wow.
So.
Yeah. So whatever that means.
It was all right.
So you're doing all right for yourself.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Are you still in the commercial real estate space?
I own all the buildings now, but they're all property managed, so I don't have to stress about them too much. As long as
You still bull on real estate during this market, or?
Real estate, I don't look at it as this market. I'm always buying real estate, man.
Wow.
If the cap table's right, then and the location's right and the property's right, I'll just, buy. I think this year, I'll buy 4 more pieces of real estate.
Commercial.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, commercial.
What type?
These will be hotel stuff. So
okay,
pretty cool.
Cool. I met a boutique commercial fund manager, Polynesian kid. What's his name? Koda? What's his name? He had like $250 million or something of assets under management. I met him actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Those guys are cool.
Yeah. He's doing pretty well. I don't know what he's doing now. It was like a year ago when we met. So
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're getting into build a successful company, Inc. 500 entrepreneur. You then started, investing in different things here and there. Like high level, like we don't need to get too much in investment strategy, but since you started investing, a couple decades ago, what assets are you really bull on? And what would you kind of direct the audience's attention towards?
It's not financial advice, but what I do is I usually have, if you have a business, you're trying to cash flow. If you don't have a business, you have a job and you cash flow, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. It's not made for most people. It's very stressful. Yeah. So, I mean, if I could go back in time, boy, if I didn't make it that second year, I probably would have just worked for Microsoft or something,
Yeah.
or Google or something, right? But you have that normal cash flow, okay? So the trick is just like live way below your means, like meager. Like you don't need to prove anything to anybody in the beginning, right? You just meager. Eat at home, cook at home, drive a junky car, man. Mm-hmm. It's fine. Then you want a dollar cost average. So you know how you have a car payment or you have Netflix subscription payment? Yep. You want to pick different buckets. So the first bucket would be stocks. Mm-hmm. And with stocks, back in the day, I started buying lots of Microsoft, Apple, back in the late 90s or 2000s. And then I've added a few more to the portfolio. I can't tell people to buy, but emerging technologies would be like AI. Mm-hmm. And even Microsoft, probably a pretty good company. Amazon, it's like stuff that's probably going to be around, Costco, stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So there's boring type of stocks, and you pick a bucket of those, and you can every month buy a certain percentage of those. Or there's a big thing that a lot of people, it's easier now. It's called the ETF. Mm-hmm. And there's one called an S&P 500 index. There's SPY, VOO. There's a bunch. You can talk to a financial advisor. Mm-hmm. There's also a NASDAQ ETF. Now, what they are is buckets of like either 100 or 500 of the leading companies in that sector. And you can buy one stock symbol and you just can buy a percentage of that every month. Why that's nice for a lot of people is because you're buying a large group of companies. So if one goes bankrupt, you don't lose all your money, right? And so a lot of times for people that want to think about it that much, they can consider that. If they go to Fidelity, I think they can set up a free account, fidelity.com, and they could talk to a financial advisor. Mm-hmm. They'll let you talk to a person that's what they do. But they have different buckets available. So that's good. Stocks is one bucket. Crypto is obviously another. A lot more risky. A lot of people want to buy meme coins and stuff. And I do buy some just for fun. That's just like Vegas money. But primarily for most people, for young people, it's just buy a little Bitcoin or something, or maybe Bitcoin, Ethereum or something, but I wouldn't go crazy in all the weird meme coin stuff because it's kind of sketchy,
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to time that
and that's what our hedge fund does, because if people want to be exposed to mid-size and small projects as well as large, we manage over 40 positions. My partner, Bridger Bennington, and I have the Ugly Unicorn hedge fund. Uh-huh. And we manage for accredited investors or above their crypto portfolios.
Oh, yes. So only accredited investors, which have $1 million net worth or above, right?
$1 million besides the primary residence, typically or above, or qualified purchasers, $5 million or above. Okay. Our accredited investor fund is almost full, like more than 97% full. So
you guys have been around for 3 years now?
3.
What's the ROI for investors for the last 3 years?
We're most proud of 22. Mm-hmm. We lost 17.5% when we were close in 22. Mm-hmm. But Bitcoin during that same time period corrected over 45%.
Wow.
So everyone else lost 45. If they had just Bitcoin, we corrected 17.5. Then we made close to 60% in that next cycle. That's not bull run yet. Mm-hmm. And then 30-something% in 24. And then this year is still too early to see where we're going to be yet. But the big thing about our fund is we focus on mid and small cap. Because usually Bitcoin runs up really heavy first, then typically Ethereum, and then other alts, and then ultra small cap. Mm-hmm. So we feel like we're entering the kind of mid and small cap cycle here anytime now. We'll probably see that run through the end of the year, hopefully.
So since you are a hedge fund, you guys are investing in other things besides cryptocurrencies, right?
No, just crypto.
Oh, just currencies?
Just crypto.
Okay. So nothing blockchain tech?
Just crypto.
Okay. Or do you keep an eye on those things? Like, outside of the fund, do you invest in blockchain tech companies?
I typically don't invest in private companies that don't have liquidity.
Okay.
I don't. It's kind of funny. Is I get a lot of angel investing type of opportunities, and I'm just like, meh. Because my idea is this: if I give someone $1 million to invest in their company, or if I put that $1 million in like Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon,
right,
like Google, Facebook, or something,
yeah,
like who has a better chance of winning over time?
The big tech, yeah.
But like the schmo that you gave $1 million to, he's probably going to go bankrupt. Like 99% of them.
99%, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, why?
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
Now, if I'm going to take $1 million and invest it into something private, I'll just invest into one of my companies I own. Because I control it and I know what I can earn.
100%.
You know, like,
I was just wondering if you have like any tentacles out on anything that's going on in DeFi or some emerging technology that we're all missing besides the overarching blockchain cryptocurrencies that lay on top of them, or the AI tech that's being implemented in them.
You can just invest in tokenization. Crypto. You don't really need to put in some weird private startup.
What's your opinion on tokenization of real estate?
You're going to see everything getting tokenized eventually.
Okay.
But there's a lot of scams right now where everyone's like, we're tokenizing. We have a special project and you can buy nodes and all this bullshit. And, and it's just a scam, right? And my answer to them is, hey, bro, why would I want to buy your stupid nodes and all that when like BlackRock will be tokenizing? Like, you think you're going to beat them?
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
But good luck, dude. You know? And the chances of BlackRock getting shut down by the SEC or something versus some random bunch of network marketing scammers starting a tokenization.
MLM tokenization.
Yeah. There's a lot of it's Utah, bro. And I'm like, nah, dude. It's the same set of guys.
So have you never taken on investment for any of your endeavors?
No.
Wow.
Except for Ugly Unicorn, the hedge fund we have invested.
Yeah, but that's a hedge fund.
But for computer companies.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's the dream.
Well, it's not that tough because what you do is you sell something, you make profit. You don't spend it and you reinvest it. And you pay yourself a little bit to eat ramen noodles. And you don't go buy your Lambo and all that shit. You buy inventory and turn your marketing up. Yeah. And then you generate more money and then you don't have any investors needed.
Yeah, that's Main Street business, right? But tech companies are built on the back of VCs and angels. And we need another round of 10 million. Okay, now we need a 50 million round. Like, where's the profits?
Well, at a certain point, though, I have a lot of friends that have done that route and done really well.
Oh, okay.
But most of them are software, right? Yeah. Software as a service, that kind of thing. Hardware is so commodity based, a little bit more difficult to do that. It can be done. Yep. But it's been more difficult.
Margins are tough for sure. That's why we're in media. Media margins are awesome. If you know what you're doing, at least. Okay, so you have this fund. Where are you allocating most of your time, or what does your time look like? You have 5 different businesses, a hedge fund, and then you invest in real estate. What does your day look like?
So a lot of the day we'll be working on our hardware companies. It's very employee intensive. So there's a lot of psychology in play with employees to make sure they're feeling good, directed correctly, and clear on their process. Hedge fund does take some time, as well. That's primarily what the hedge fund is doing analysis on new project and making sure current projects are viable. But also it's raising capital from investors. Luckily, Bridger, my partner, hedge fund partner, handles all compliance and legal and all that. And I pay attention. I have to understand all the things there as best I can. But that's what he does. And so I worry more about, I'm the CIO, Chief Investment Officer, and I help raise money too. So, but we share the raise money thing. People like to hear both ends of it, How are you guys set up? Is it sound? Is it structured correctly and right? And are you managing my money correctly? And so we share those. And then we have analysts who work for us to manage and do research on subcategories of tokens and that, from mid cap, high cap, small cap, and also some degen stuff. We call it moonshot.
Like shitcoins?
Not shitcoins, but moonshot.
DJ, okay.
Smaller projects.
Yeah. So I was going to say what percentage is allocated towards that?
We don't buy on 10% typically for moonshot.
Have you ever had something just take off? Like,
we've had some crazy stuff though, but moonshot shouldn't be a big bank because I mean, if you put like all your money in moonshot, you probably lose money long term unless you got real lucky.
What's the AUM right now for you guys?
Right now, it's about 30 million.
Oh, I thought you guys were at 50 million.
About 30.
Oh, okay.
Well, the market corrected.
Oh, that's right.
Last 14 days.
Dang. Okay.
But you go up, you go down.
Yeah.
You know?
So
but long term, you go up. You know?
What's your next investment fund?
We have Ugly Unicorn 2 launching hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And because right now with how we're set up, we can take accredited investors, 99 with the way that we're set up. The second fund can take qualified purchasers, but they have to have a 5 million net worth and higher. You can have almost 2,000 investors, a little under 2,000.
That's amazing. So what's your experience with that? Because I've gotten exposed to the investment fund world through Bridger, through his group. I signed up 3 years ago, and I've been to 2 of the 3 conferences. What's your experience like, managing the fund? Have you enjoyed it?
Oh, I love it. That's what I would, if I sold I probably will sell my tech companies in the next 10 years. And just run fund because the fund is just fun.
Really?
Pure fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
What is fun about it?
You just got to hang out with other people that are super highly intelligent, and help them. And then at the end of the year, hopefully you've made them a lot of money. And then you just get, hey, you guys are awesome. Can I send you more money? Make me more, please. I'm like, okay, we'll do our best for you. And we can't guarantee anything, but I mean, you got to have years that are red. You got to have years that are green. The big thing with a fund is you just have to manage expectations. You just got to tell people it's a company. It's like, we did really good. We didn't do good, but this is what we're doing. And I think if you're really direct and honest with people and over the long term you perform, you earn their loyalty.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough, man. Crypto is such a crazy space because of the 80% volatility generally, right? That's a big bet.
Yeah.
This secondary fund. So just so the audience knows, like, what are you talking about? Why would you start a second fund? So generally in the fund world, you would once you launch your first fund, you kind of get the experience. And then 3 to 5 years later, you're already, launching a second fund on another thesis or something else that you learned.
Or bigger
scale, more assets under management. Then that kind of just continues because the business model in general is lucrative for all parties involved, and like you said, it's just enjoyable to deal with really.
Nobody trusts you at first.
Right.
So after a few years and you have a track record, then the big checks start coming out.
Yeah.
Then they're like, okay, you guys, a lot of people saying you did good stuff and you've been audited and this and that, so we have more faith to help.
So with that pattern, I'm going to go dive into the Ugly Unicorn 2.0 or 2. What's besides you're just changing who can invest in the fund, or is there another thesis or asset class that you guys are really bull on? Okay.
The only difference is it's up to close to 2,000 investors that are qualified purchasers instead of 100. So you can scale it to a lot bigger fund. Now, the advantage to investors, though, is they pay less management fees if they have a certain amount invested. And that's great for them. So they make even more money, so it's good.
I think the story that you have there with how you met Bridger Pennington, but originally you wanted to start a fund with John Pennington or do business with John Pennington. What was that?
So old mentor, Jeff Flam, I met him when I was 19 years old. And
wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's my good friend.
Yeah.
And,
that guy's a legend in the Utah business.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, we have a retreat. I want you to be an instructor. It's for his little mastermind. He doesn't care about the money. He just wants the mentor. So he's like, I invited some of my old friends. So he invited Bridger's dad, me, and a bunch of other cool dudes. So we're going down there, and then I'm driving with Bridger's dad down there in their truck. And that's how I get to know them. And he's like, so what are you buying in crypto? And we don't have a fund at the time. So I'm like, well, I'm buying this and buying that. He's like, I'll buy some too. So it ends up, he throws in like millions of dollars into what I say.
Huh.
And then he laughs though, because I think like a year or two later, he's like, dude, I made so much money from what you told me to do. It's crazy. He goes, why don't you like help more people like me that have a lot of money and want to gamble a little? I'm like, well, I don't know how funds work. And at the time, Bridger and I had been friends and we're like, we're going to start a real estate fund. We're going to take old strip mall and we're going to take old beat up strip malls and empty shopcos and turn them into like industrial flex.
Oh.
And because I've done some of those and they did okay. So he's like, and Bridger's like, my dad said we should start a crypto fund. And I'm like, he goes, you're so good at that, dude. And I know funds.
Yeah.
And so I talked to Bridger's dad. I'm like, why don't we just partner up? Your son's a little young and we're close to the same age. He's like, dude, I just retired, man. My company is worth $28 billion at the time of retirement, man. I don't even want to deal with anything now. I'm like, fine. He goes, but if you partner up with my son, I think you guys will do just fine. And you got me on call, you know. I'm like, okay. So then Bridger and I launched fund. And then with, I think the first round, we had about 7, 8 million come in really fast. Just from texting people, hey, we're doing this thing. And then, you know, then it kind of peaked out a little bit, and then crypto went kind of crappy, and then it went up, and then now it's way higher than it was back then. So it's turned out all right.
What you speak so highly of John Pennington.
Yeah,
I know you have a podcast. Are you still doing your podcast?
Oh, not as much.
Okay. So he was on your podcast and just you speak really highly of him. He's one of your mentors?
Yeah, good friend.
What have you learned, like in a nutshell? It's going to be hard to obviously say in a nutshell, but in a nutshell, what have you learned from the Pennington family?
Oh, he's simple. He's like, don't take shortcuts and manage expectations. That's it.
Wow.
That's it. I'm like, could you give me any other advice? He goes, not really, man. He's like, just manage expectations correctly. You know, do what you say. You know, if you don't know, find experts, find out. Don't lie to people. Be truthful. Be transparent. Over communicate. He's like, you know, and be consistent. You know, in that you should find.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. So the Adaptive Leaders podcast acronym is ALP, and then I broke that up: adapt to thrive, lead to inspire, and persist to succeed. And I feel like you've embodied literally all of those things. And I just want to say thank you for coming on. Thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for sharing all of the wisdom and the reframes and the mindset and all of the different things that we learned on today's podcast are invaluable.
People are always asking where to find me because
Yeah,
I speak and stuff at different things, but Instagram, dude, I hate LinkedIn. I'm on it, but I don't. There's more spam on LinkedIn than I get on Instagram.
100%.
You know, so Instagram's Dan's Millionaire Code blue check, because there's 200 fake Dans out there. Dan's Millionaire Code blue check.
That's where people can find you. What's a closing message you want to give to the audience?
I think the big one is like, sit down and write down today your financial, physical, and spiritual goals. Be very clear on where you want to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and be very specific. So I wouldn't just say be leaner or be buffer or be richer. Like, put a dollar amount, put some math to it, and then draw your map out, and then look at that every day. And then every day on your physical, financial, and spiritual goals, make a big movement towards that.
Every day.
Yeah. Something, even if it's a little movement, but try to go for big movements. But movement is movement, man.
Yeah, take action. And you're the example of that, and you've lived your life based off that. So I appreciate it. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Adaptive Leaders podcast. If we brought you any value today, like, share, subscribe to this episode. Share this with somebody that you think could learn from an Inc. 500 entrepreneur. Do that. So thanks. Peace.